Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. So our local pump customer has brought us another pump shaft that needs to be modified. This is an 1.5 inch pump shaft, one that's already seen some use. It's already been pre-machined and used, but they keep a lot of these on their rack over there. And for situations like this where they're doing a job and they need another shaft made or something modified, they can take an existing machine shaft and just simply cut it and remachine one end in many cases and put them back in service. And that's what we're doing here. So they've been working on a job at the local paper mill, putting in a new pump and a new motor, and they need a new shaft made for this particular application. So what they need is this one. We're going to cut it to 59 inches. It's going to be threaded on one end, 6 inches long of threads, and that's for 1.5 inch 8 left-hand thread. So they want 6 inches of thread, and then we've got to mill a 3/8 keyway 8 inches long. So cut it, thread it, mill a keyway. That's the extent of the job right there. These are the parts that go with it right here. This is another job that I actually just did for them. Did that yesterday. This is for a different application where they needed this threaded bushing board so that they can install a reducer bushing. They installed a different size shaft and they needed to reduce the size of this threaded bushing here to get it down to the appropriate size. So this was just a separate job that we did. It's sitting here waiting on them. They're going to take this guy, and I've got it 2/1000 press fit, and they'll press that together, and then that will be for a different job that they're on. But again, that one's finished up there. So I'm going to bring you along for the journey on this job here, and we've done a lot of these recently on the channel, and I usually try to go into quite a bit of informative information on everything that we're doing with the single point threading and that kind of stuff. And I think maybe for this job, I kind of want to focus a little bit more on getting some good video to share with you, maybe enjoy a little bit more of the sounds from the shop, like I like to call it, and just kind of make a good video of just showing some of the machine work with a little bit less of the instructions and the details of me trying to explain every single thing to you. So let's get started on this job and have some fun with it, and hopefully get some fun video to share with you as well. All right. Before we get started our cutting and machining, I was going to explain the parts that go on the end of the shaft here. So you have this piece, which is the coupling for the electric motor. You have the keyway inside. There's your key that you're going to use, 3/8 key, like that. And then this is the nut that will be used here. This is a bronze nut, 1.5 inch, 8 left hand. And once this end is cut and we have it threaded and keyed, this coupling here will go onto the shaft and hooks to the electric motor, key to drive it. And then you have this nut that's going to screw on, and it butts up to the coupling here. They have it drilled and tapped so you can put a bolt in there and lock the two together. And once this is all together on the shaft, they have another coupling. You'll have 2 inches of thread behind the nut that another coupling is going to attach to, and that will allow them, that'll give them 2 inches or so of vertical adjustment on the shaft once it's in place, so they can raise it and lower it to get it exactly where they need. So that's what I wanted to explain, so you know what parts are going on the end of the shaft and why we're having to modify it, or why they are wanting this particular shaft modified. All right, this is just this is the coupling. He usually brings one of these just so that we have a good reference on the size of the thread that's going to go on the end of it there. So this is really just kind of used for gauging the threads. All right, so now we'll go ahead and head over to the saw and get our shaft cut. Always good to re-verify your measurements before you cut this expensive material. They want it finished at 59 inches long. We've got it at 59 1/8. They give us 1/8 to face off of it. This is the drop section that we just cut off here, and I had asked the customer if it would be okay if I cut me off about 2 foot of this just to have on the shelf and use as like setup for my steady rest, and they said yeah, it's perfectly fine. They take this stuff and they have a rack that they put it on. So we're just going to cut us off a 24-inch piece to use in the lathe for setup, and I'm gonna keep the end with the threads on there just to have the part with the threads already machined. the chuck set to 1.5 inches. This is our short cut off. We're going to use this to set our steady rest. Anyone asking why I'm using a steady rest for this is because I want to try to keep the shaft as straight as possible, and I don't want it sticking out any further past the headstock of the lathe than it needs to be. So I'm just going to set this up so that we got our 4-jaw handle on one end, we have our steady rest, and going to be live center supporting the other end. want to verify 8 threads per inch. Well, we've got this end threaded there, and I gotta say this has been some pretty gummy stainless. I have no idea what grade of stainless it is, but it was pretty gummy. But once I got the bulk of the material removed from the thread that I was cutting there, I backed off on the cuts. I was going 2,000ths at a pass and then 1,000ths a pass, and then after that I took several spring passes, and it got it cleaned up and looking really good. It looks good. It's not, I'm not gonna call that a perfect thread, but it's really, really close and it looks great. And we landed right on the pitch size that we were wanting. I was shooting for a pitch diameter of 1.413 to 1.418, and I mic'd right at 1.415, which is what the sample over there measured. And then you saw the bronze nut went on there, and it had a really good fit. So our threads are good. We've got it filed and polished there, softened up. So the lathe work is now complete, and we're going to take it out of here and move over here to the manual mill where we have to mill our 3/8 keyway. All right.